Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the director of mental health awareness here at Silicon Slopes. On this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions. Let me introduce my guest to you today. This is Brent Esplin. Hello, Brent.
Hello, Dr. Morgan.
It's so nice to have you here.
Thank
Brent
you.
and I met, a year or so ago at one of our town halls. You were a presenter there and have been a familiar face there as well. And you're a good guy.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I want to say that back to you, and only because I remember when we were talking the second time I was here, my daughter was about ready to go on her mission.
Oh.
And you were so kind to her.
Oh, that's nice.
You were so kind, and crazy things. She's almost to come home now. So that's how long it's been. I guess it's been about a year and a half.
Oh my heavens!
Yeah.
Well, that's very sweet. Well, I remember having that conversation, and she's lovely.
Thank you.
Let me tell you about Brent. Brent is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has spent the past 25 years working with teens and their families in a variety of different clinical settings. During this time, he has served in various leadership capacities, including clinical director, utilization review director, admissions and business development director, and executive director. Brent has been instrumental in the founding and development of multiple residential treatment centers for teens and played a pivotal role in launching a full-scale psychiatric hospital. Brent currently serves as the executive director of Oasis Ascent, an adolescent residential treatment center for teens located in Provo, Utah, and is driven to find ways to create more access to families who need mental health services. Brent is an active member of his community and finds the most joy spending time with his wife, Julie, their 3 young adult children who all enjoy sports, hiking, camping, and anything outdoors. Well, thanks again for being here. I was saying earlier, I love interviewing other mental health professionals and someone with adult children as well.
Right?
We're like, yeah, and we were just talking about reading glasses before this, and
We're in the same demographic
we are
here.
in the same- right? We're Gen Xers here. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
What year were you born? I'm just curious.
72.
And I was in 69. So
Okay, right there.
right there.
Yep.
Well, what was what got you started in mental health? What got you interested? For me, it was like, I don't know. I just thought, well, I'm good at talking with people. And then realized I needed to be a good listener to be in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? How did you get
Yeah,
started?
it's interesting. So when you talk about the listening piece, I think that's where it started for me. Like I found that people would talk to me and that I had a talent for listening and just being there and being present with them. And that occurred all through my kind of my undergraduate years. I studied sociology at the University of Utah and realized, hey, you know what? A sociology degree isn't going to do a whole lot for me.
Right.
And so looking into graduate options, I had an institute teacher at the University of Utah that was a marriage and family therapist. And that's kind of what introduced me to that particular profession in the mental health field, and ended up, having me go off to Wichita, Kansas, to Friends University to attend graduate school. And it's been, I guess, the rest is a little bit history, I guess.
And you've worked with adolescents mostly in your career.
It's true.
But with an MFT degree, typically people would think, well, that's marriage and family, right? That would be mostly like marriage counseling and stuff. So how did that progress?
It's a great point. Yeah. So coming out of graduate school as licensed professionals, as you know, we have to work under the supervision
Right.
of a supervisor. And
Prior to
25
licensure.
exactly 25 years ago, there weren't very many marriage and family therapy supervisors that even existed here in Utah.
Yeah.
And so that's where I had to find one at a program or facility or outpatient center. And I found one at a residential treatment program in Southern Utah. And that's what got me started into the adolescent residential treatment field. And I fell in love with it. And, it has its challenges, right? But I knew I loved teenagers, and partly because I feel like they keep me young in my brain, even though, like we were saying, like you and I are both
Well, you don't want to
a little older now, right? Yes, because I do. I feel like they do keep me young and energized. And so that's what I've been passionate about for forever. Many times people ask me, hey, so you're a marriage and family therapist, are you in private practice? The answer is no. I dabbled in that for a minute and realized, you know what? It's just not for me. I just feel like I can have more impact with teens and their families in these residential settings.
And it's an interesting kind of professional point that I often point out to people who are thinking about going into a mental health related profession. Your degree and your field of emphasis does not necessarily dictate where you're going to end up, because so much of it has to do with the training you get and the supervision you get and expertise that you get over time. My PhD is in counseling psychology, which is typically like would be like a college counseling center. If you looked
Mhm.
it up in a book or asked Chad where do counseling psychologists usually work, and I did 20 years in the forensic space
Mm.
where I was working in prisons and jails and that because that's where I got my supervision.
Yes.
My one of my first supervisors and one of my first employments was in a place where where it was a forensic population, and that's where I got skilled, and then ended up supervising people later, right? That's
Mhm.
how it works, and then they get their skill in that. So for anyone who's thinking, oh, I have to make sure that I get a degree in something that's going to directly relate to what I want to do, it's not necessarily the case. As long as you're licensed and you have training and supervision in that, then you can kind of do what you want. Licensure is key.
Yes, it's very true. So sometimes your path finds you,
That's so
right?
true.
And I feel like being mental health professionals, it is somewhat of a calling, and not everybody has, I guess, the patience,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
I guess the stomach, the stress hardiness to do it because it is not
yeah.
easy.
Well, in residential particularly, right? One of my first my psychology residency was at an adult inpatient psychiatric, and then this is the highest level of care there is, right?
Mhm.
I mean, residential is the highest level of care. Um, well, actually,
Psychiatric hospital is
right,
one
right,
higher.
that's true.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
residential, yes,
A hair step down. In fact,
exactly.
yeah, and ours. So there's residential level of care, and then there's a in Utah an intermediate secure level of care, which is halfway between a residential treatment license and a
And an
psychiatric
inpatient, okay.
inpatient license, right? And that's what we are with the facility that we
You guys are in
run
that
right now.
intermediate? Okay.
Correct.
So
Yes.
it is a locked facility?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
So then what differentiates you? That you're not on a hospital campus? 'Cause I'm
Yes.
sure you have psychiatrists, you probably have
We do
all
we
the
do
yeah,
we
yeah.
do. It is a less sterile environment, right? So you have
Okay.
an acute psychiatric hospital inpatient that is a very sterile environment, and you get, I mean, you have to get rid of any kind of, any kind of cord, any kind of ligature issues,
Right, right.
all the furniture and all the appliances all have to be
Okay.
anti-ligature.
Right,
We
right.
do a lot of that at our facility, and yet we are not a sterile hospital setting, and it's intentional that way. Where we want to be more of a home-like setting, so that then kids are with us a longer period of time than they are in a psychiatric
Right,
hospital. I
right.
mean, you're talking psychiatric hospitals, maybe 7, 10 days or so,
Exactly. Yeah.
and for us, it's more of a 60 to 90 day
Okay.
approach.
And so you need it to feel more like home because if they're gonna progress in that setting, it can't feel like that sterile and when you say sterile, you're not talking about, like, antiseptic, you're talking
Yeah.
about, like, what's the types of things that would be restricted from that space that people could use to harm themselves. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
Well, and adolescence too. I mean, it's adolescence is kind of a dumpster fire to begin with for so many. It's just so hard, right? So many things changing, so many things going on. And then to compound that with significant mental health issues that require that level of care. I mean, is it tough to see these kids suffer?
It is.
Yeah.
It is tough. In fact, what one of the pieces and I guess the vision behind Oasis, the program that we're
Tell
operating
us about
currently,
that. Yeah.
is that kind of rewinding back to what we were talking about as far as my biography. I helped start a psychiatric hospital about 15 years ago, and I saw so many teens here in Utah. They were coming through that psychiatric hospital, and they they'd be with us for 7 or 10 days. We get them stabilized on medication. We would do some crisis
Yeah.
interventions with
Yeah.
them, but from perspective of family therapy, there isn't time to do family
Mm.
therapy in a psychiatric setting like that, right? And so the unfortunate thing is that as these kids go back to their home environment, many of them have dysfunctional settings, right? They're not able to communicate effectively with their parents and vice versa. And so they would be sometimes a revolving door back to us,
Yeah.
in a 30-day period of time. And the hard part was that most of the families here in Utah weren't able to afford residential treatment level of care because it's really expensive, like to the tune of about $15,000 a month, typically for an adolescent residential treatment
Is it
facility.
covered by insurance?
And so back then it was not,
Okay.
right? And there were some portions back then that were, but most of the programs here in Utah, and phenomenal programs, really the best really in the world, were long-term programs that maybe a small portion, maybe the first 2 to 4 weeks covered by insurance, but then a parent's got to be all in and have the
Yeah.
resources, 150, $200,000 in order for them to be able to have their kid come in and then complete the program, right? And so because of that, because me seeing, I guess I saw that need there. That's where the vision behind Oasis came of, okay, how can we develop a program that can, like you're referring to, tap into insurance, be an appropriate length of stay for the insurance to be able to be palatable to them,
Right.
right? And give them some really quality family therapy systems work so that they can be working on not just the kid working in the program and learning skills, but also the parents alongside them learning skills, because you haven't learned skills of, collectively together with the family system. That's what's going to be able to give them the greatest chance of success after they leave a residential facility like Oasis.
It's so true. Yeah, because like you said, if they get dumped back into that same environment, uh, the chances of relapse, so to speak, like emotional relapse, right, going back to the same old behaviors, um, are very high. And like I was talking with a friend the other day who does works in special education in mostly with behavior disordered kids at the elementary level. And I was asking him what kind of diagnosis do they usually see, and he was saying they see a lot of oppositional defiant disorder and kind of these aggressive behaviors. And I was like, in like 5-year-olds, and I'm like, you don't talk with the 5-year-old, you talk with their parents, right? Because
Hmm.
that is not a 5-year-old kid issue,
Yes.
that is a family systems issue
Yeah.
that is almost always being a major contributor to that child's behavior. And I would expect with adolescents similar, yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the parents that are coming to us and seeking support and services, we are being very clear with them that, hey, you know what? It's going to be important for you to be invested in this process, and work closely alongside your son or your daughter in order for this to be able to be as effective as possible. So, I mean, we're providing them not just family therapy work on a weekly basis and multiple times a week, but also doing like parent skills groups with
Yeah.
them virtually. Also, when they come in person, in order for them to be able to learn the skills that they need to, because most of these parents, they want to do things differently. They want to know how to communicate more
Right.
effectively with their teen. They just don't know how to go about doing that. And then they're in a place of crisis because their teen has been, engaging in self-harming behavior, suicidal ideation. I mean, some serious, serious issues that they have that cause them to have to, come to a place like we have that, I mean, no parent ever sees that happening in their life until
Right.
they get to that point of crisis.
And I think you're right. I think most parents, when they get to that point, they're willing to do things. They're willing to change, but most of them just don't know how.
Yeah, it's all right.
Right?
Yes.
They're just like, what do we do? And yeah, and so I think that's amazing. Is that in adolescent treatment? Is that a common model? Is like family systems kind of the prevailing model?
I mean, for a quality program, I would say
Yes.
yes. Yes, and most of the programs now have realized the importance of the family therapy component in it. I mean, there were, 25 years ago, maybe not so much, more of like the
Right.
the idea of like, "Hey,
The identified patient.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Here's my kid, fix them,
Yes.
and then call us when he's done,"
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That type of thing. We've come a long way in the last 25 years, which is really good and important.
Oh yeah, I think it's amazing. And as people just kind of realize their part in that. And I like to distinguish between what I call causal factors and contributing factors. I don't know that there's a lot of causal things out there, and if there are, we're pretty bad at identifying them to say we know this thing caused that. But there are a lot of contributing things and a lot of
Mhm.
things that we say when this environment exists, that the likelihood of this behavior going up is high because of all these things. And so yeah, I don't know that parents necessarily sometimes that guilt becomes overwhelming. They think, well, I did this. And it's like, well, no, you didn't. It's not your fault that this thing is the way it is. But that doesn't mean that change on your part isn't essential to this thing moving forward as well.
Absolutely, absolutely true, and maybe just to share a little personal part of that, and part of where my passion comes from related to mental health. I have 2 boys, and like I've mentioned before, I mean, they're young adults now, but when they were younger, when they were in elementary school, we went to parent teacher conference when my oldest was in 4th grade, and the teacher sat us down and said, "I'm really concerned about Canyon." It was Mr. Green. I'll never forget this guy because he's changed my son's life. And he says, Brent, Julie, he's not learning how to read like he's supposed to. He's not staying up on his subjects as effectively as we wish we could. And we're concerned that he has ADHD. And so as parents, he's our oldest. And we're like, okay, so what do we do?
Right.
Okay, we'll look to change diet, exercise, sleep. And nothing seemed to really work effectively for him. And so we were very fortunate that Mr. Green advocated for us. My kids were in the Alpine School District, to get the school district psychologist to come and do not a full battery of tests, but just some modified psychological testing to be able to identify, okay, what exactly might be
Right.
going on here. And through this modified testing with my oldest son Canyon, as well as my son Eli, who are both struggling with similar issues, they were 2 years apart. They were able to identify that, hey, you know what? These both of them struggle with ADHD, not hyperactive type, which is that more like in
Right.
your face. They're in the principal's office. You can see that much more,
Exactly.
much more easily identified. They're ADHD inattentive
Inattentive
type,
type.
right? Where they're just physically there, but their mind is like somewhere else, you know?
Exactly.
And so being able to identify that, also identify the fact that they both struggled with dyslexia,
Mm.
which obviously led to the issue with reading. And so by identifying that, I felt so much gratitude for the teacher and for the psychologist to help us identify that. So then we're like, okay, let's see what we can figure out. Get them on some medication to try that. And as we know, medication is very much trial and error.
Yes.
And so we got him on a
It's a little Wild
medication.
West in
It
psychiatry.
totally is, right? And so we got them both on the same medication, and like literally like probably a month into Beyond Medicine, we were on vacation in Arizona, and my second son Eli like started crying for no reason. And we're like, Eli, dude, what's wrong with you, man? We're supposed to be having fun here. He's like, I don't know why I'm crying. And guess what? The reality was the medicine was making him depressed, right? And so then we quickly pivoted to a different medicine
Yeah.
for not just my son Eli, but for my son Canyon as well. And we were so fortunate and lucky that the second medicine worked and helped them to be able to focus more effectively. They took that medicine through their elementary school years. And during that time, they started to learn skills that would help them to focus.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
And that's one of the
so
key elements here is it's not just about medication and or therapy. It's like, hey, learning actual skills that they can utilize in their lives. And the skills and the importance of what my sons learned was that exercise helps their minds to be able to focus and get dialed in. And both of them, as they got into playing soccer and football into elementary and into junior high and high school, they realized, hey, working out in the gym, that totally helped their brains to get dialed in and focused and concentrate. And they went from like both of them from so many struggles in elementary school to getting into high school and ending up with straight A's all the way through their high school years. Both of them at BYU. In fact, my oldest just graduated from the MAC program with his master's in accounting, which is one of the top programs in the country
Absolutely.
at BYU, as the top accounting tax student 2 weeks ago, right? And so, and I share this story only because, like, my kids that I see are just like the kids that we serve at Oasis in a treatment program. They are really, really smart kids. They just learn differently, and they have to learn skills to be able to help them to more effectively focus and concentrate. And one of the ways that we're giving back at Oasis is because, like, I received these resources so many years ago from a school psychologist. I have and we as a program have dedicated ourselves to doing psychological testing, which with each of the students that we serve, we absorb that cost ourselves because we realize the importance of these parents and these kids understanding, okay, what is the diagnosis that you're struggling with? And as they understand that, then parents and treatment providers can more effectively know how to treat them and help them and understand the skills that they can learn for them to be able to go out and be successful in the world. Because, like I said, the kids that we see, I know they are super, super smart kids. And actually they're going out there and they're changing the world, right? One new idea and outside the box idea at a time.
I love that. Two things about what we were just talking about. I really love. The first is just this idea of that change involves effort on our part and learning new skills. And there's so much out there where people they'll get a diagnosis, they'll get on medication, and they figure that's all they need to do. And that is literally only the first step. There's so many things that need to be done after that while you're on that medication to learn different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of doing, creating these habits that are going to promote good mental health in the long run. And maybe you're on the medication the rest of your life. Maybe whatever you needed it for, now you've been able to resolve because you've literally changed your brain chemistry
Mm-hmm.
through those behavioral ways, right? The
Mm-hmm.
brain is changing all the time, whether or not we're on medicine. It's creating new connections and things. So I love that. I also love the idea of accurate diagnosis, because if I had a soapbox, I'd be on it right now. And inaccurate diagnosis drives me nuts,
Mm-hmm.
and it is rampant, and even worse now because of the internet. Because people will put their symptoms into chat or Claude or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and say, "What do I have?" And then it'll say, "Oh, you have this." And you know as well as I do that diagnosis is more of an art than it is a science half the
Yes.
time, and there's
Yes.
so much data that you need, and there are subtleties where you're like, "Oh, this," where you're differentiated between a couple different diagnoses where you'd go, "Oh, well, this thing makes it lean more like this," or maybe it's not even diagnosable in the first case
Mm-hmm.
because maybe there are symptoms, but they're not clinically significant, or they're not causing impairment in certain areas in life. And diagnosis is so powerful. It can be powerful in a good way if it's accurate, because it can inform treatment and other sorts of care. It can also be very, very powerful in a negative way, because then we label ourselves with that and we think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I have, you know, you get diagnosed with ADHD when you're 5 years old, and then they're 45 years old and they say they still have ADHD. I'm like, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
When's the last time you went to, well, I went to my school counselor when I was in the 5th grade, and that's how I found out. I'm like, well, who says that person was right at the very beginning?
Yeah.
How do you even know that was accurate? Because there's a bunch of crummy diagnosis out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still on my soapbox. And, and then my wife hears this all. It's my rant about it. And we change. We change, and
We
symptom
do.
patterns change, and we get better or we get worse or whatever. And so sometimes I feel like people, it's like they have these like charm bracelets with all their diagnoses listed on them for what they got in 5th grade and 8th grade and 10th grade and college and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know that you still have that. And we're not slaves to that as well. There's always something we can do. Okay.
It's very true.
End of soapbox. Yeah.
Well, and if I can just piggyback on your soapbox for a second, because
You can have it. Yeah.
well, it's a little bit of my soapbox too, right? And that is, with medication, you're absolutely right. I mean, just because somebody starts on a medication doesn't mean you're going to be on it the rest of your life. Back to my own boys' story, they were on their medication up until about their end of their elementary, first of their junior high years, and then as they learned these skills and implemented those, then they were able to be off those, and with the skills, able to learn how to focus and concentrate.
This is the same kid who just graduated top of his class in the MAC program.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right.
Who's been off medication for probably
for like
15 years.
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so it's certainly possible. It's okay to be on. I mean, if you need medicine, let's make sure you're on it. But not everybody needs that. And I think it's good to take the least restrictive approach possible. Right. With the diagnosis piece, this is such a key, and that's where, as Oasis, as a treatment provider, it's actually it's an acronym that stands for Observation, Assessment, Stabilization, and Intensive Support, and it's really about being able to drill down the diagnosis. And we have actually students coming from not just from Utah, but from all over the country to come to us for a really quality assessment, so that the parents and the teen and the other providers can understand, okay, how do we go about helping this particular teen, right? And the interesting thing, Dr. Morgan, is we're seeing a lot of misdiagnosed issues, right? And, there's a difference, as you know, between psychological testing and psychiatric evaluations.
Totally.
Very different.
Yes.
And yet a lot of people in the lay community lump them together, And so our commitment to the psychological testing piece, right, is really to try to help these teens and their parents understand that, for example, we're seeing, for instance, in teen girls, we're seeing a lot of females come in diagnosed with, well, I guess not officially diagnosed, but with borderline personality traits. Okay, they're not 18; they can't actually be diagnosed with that,
Yes.
but they have the traits. Okay,
Right.
So they're presenting with these traits, and as they've come to us, what we've found out is so many of these female adolescents are actually misdiagnosed with that, and they're actually on the autism spectrum.
Wow.
And the two presentations are very similar. However, you treat them very differently,
Yes.
right? And we have some experts in house. With Dr. Jason King is an expert in our treatment program that's really dialed in with the female adolescents and specifically autism spectrum, and then be able to help get them the appropriate skills and the appropriate treatment providers after residential to know, like, hey, what direction would they most effectively go in with an autism spectrum diagnosis, and then also helping, like, empowering the student, empowering the teen of like, hey, well, here's why you may have some struggles, interpersonally and like making friends and those types of, and here's how we can help you to be able to, model for you and practice those skills to have you be more effective, right? So that's the kind of on the female side. On the male side, it's actually maybe even slightly worse because we've seen males that have come in misdiagnosed with conduct disorder when in reality they're on the autism spectrum.
Wow.
And we had a kid maybe it's been a couple of years ago now from back east that a referral partner of ours called and said, "Hey, Brent, can you take this kid? I'm concerned that a psychiatric provider, a nurse practitioner, had diagnosed them with as a conduct disorder, right?" And he's like, "This kid is not conduct disorder. However, he's about 6'4". He's about 220 pounds of solid muscle, right? And so nobody will touch him because
Right.
he's big. He's a giant, and he's a future D1 lacrosse player." And we're like, okay, so we give this kid a shot, and he comes in. He's a model student. We do psychological testing, and sure enough, he's on the autism spectrum, high end on the spectrum, which causes him to be rigid and have some of those challenges that maybe are a little bit similar presentation to oppositional defiant disorder or
Yeah.
conduct disorder, but very, very
But
different.
very different.
Very different path, right? And if that kid went on with that diagnosis to a treatment program that treated conduct disorder kids,
Oh,
guess
yeah.
what's going to happen? He's going to become his diagnosis.
Oh, exactly. He'll
right?
end up in jail.
Exactly. And that's the sad reality. And that's where it's so important, the diagnosis and having that be accurate. And I'm going to step back off the soapbox that you created for both of us. How's that sound?
I'm glad that you like the soapbox because it's a pet peeve of mine. But right, and because ultimately it's about getting people the help that they need, and I love on top of just accurate diagnosis, but helping them understand that there's a way around this or a way through this every time. And I think that there's so much despair and lack of hope that can come when we get into mental health and people think, oh, I've got this condition. Even if let's say it's accurate, right? Because half the time it's inaccurate, then they get diagnosed with.
Yes.
Let's say they actually get an accurate diagnosis, but then for someone to have the skills and abilities to say, and here's how you can fix that, instead of this just being kind of like an emotional death sentence.
Yes.
And you will always be this way, and you will never find a way out of it. What a terrible and what a particularly horrible thing for an adolescent to think, is they're looking at the rest of their life and thinking, who am I going to become? And they think like, well, I'm just going to be in and out of jail the rest of my life, or I'm just going to be in a bunch of broken relationships, or in and out of psych hospitals, or whatever it is, to be able to give them the hope to say, this is absolutely treatable.
Yep.
You can, and there's things that you need to learn how to do, difficult things that you're going to have to do, but you can do it. And to give them the confidence that
Totally.
they can do it. Oh, that's
The empowerment is
so valuable.
yes, huge.
I love that. Well, Brent, I have loved my conversation with you. Talking shop here about mental health. Hopefully it wasn't too high level. I don't think it was. But thank you for all you're doing with Oasis. If people want to learn more about it, where can they go?
Yeah, they can go to our website, oasisascent.com.
Oasis Ascent. Yeah.
Yep. And they can contact us there through our admissions teams there, and happy to be a resource to them, and really, we're committed also just to being a resource, like I said, nationally, but really and equally as important here locally for families that don't have the resources to pay for $100,000 for a treatment program. The model we've developed is one that pre-authorizes with insurance companies, and so their ability to be able to pay for their deductible and their co-insurance, and then be able to get them for themselves and for their child, $50,000 to $75,000 worth of treatment.
Right.
It is really what we're committed to doing, and wanting just to help more families out there, create more access to those that need it.
I love what you're doing. Thank you again for coming in today.
Thanks, Dr. Morgan. Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we increase our mental health momentum.